want you to picture this. Imagine you spend a ton of money to go to Hawaii, the Big Island, Kona, Hawaii. And the idea of going to Hawaii is to connect with nature. And one of the ways to connect with nature is to do a manta ray dive. Now, this is a dive at night. So it's already a little nerve-wracking to dive at night, but when you get in the water, you have this beautiful experience, and it's a life-changing experience. But how many is too many operators that are offering this service? We're going to talk to Martina Wing from the Manta Ray group, as well as from the Hawaii Ocean Watch. She is here to talk about her experience with the manta ray operating experience, but also with making sure that the manta rays are protected, and that also the tourists who are going to pay for this service are also having a good time and that they're safe. It's been a little bit since the operating industry has grown for the manta ray experience. And so she wanted to talk about how that's grown and how regulations need to be put into place to protect manta rays, as well as the operators, as well as the people. And we're going to talk about that on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And on today's episode, we have Martina Wing, who is the owner of Manta Ray Advocates, a tour operator that takes people out to have a beautiful experience with seeing manta rays eat at night, diving at night. Imagine what this experience can do for you to connect with the ocean, to connect with these majestic animals, just sort of diving through, doing backflips in the water, eating plankton at night. It's crazy to think about it. I am an advanced open water diver. I've done dives at night in a lake, not in the ocean. And being able to see this is quite the experience. People get nervous when they go in. They come out with their life-changing experience, and it's amazing. And Martina's here to talk about that experience and why it's so important for people to connect with the ocean in this way, but also that we need to protect these manta rays from this operating business going crazy in terms of the number of operators that come in, having the snorkelers come by as well as divers, what to expect, and sort of the questions to ask when you are going to talk to these dive operators about this experience. So there's a lot to cover in this episode. Martina was great in divulging a lot of stuff that's been going on, and things that need to be done, regulations that need to be put into place, and why they haven't been put into place. We're still asking that question, and her efforts to push forward regulations for these boat operators or these dive operators. So we're going to talk about that all in today's episode. And so here is the interview with Martina Wing, talking about manta ray diving operations. Enjoy the interview, and I'll talk to you after. Hey, Martina, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about manta rays?
I'm so ready. Thanks for letting me be on your podcast.
Oh, I am so excited. I don't get to talk about manta rays a lot, and so I'm very excited to be able to talk about manta rays. And we're talking about it in a very different context today. There's sometimes I have another podcast called Beyond Jaws where we get into the science and the physiology and all the morphologies and stuff of stingrays. Today we're going to be getting into a different type. We're going to get into the conservation of manta rays, but also from in the eyes and the lens of a tour operator that has also a nonprofit to protect ocean animals, not just the manta rays, but the entire environment. And we're going to be in the area of Hawaii, which is a lot of fun because I'm about to head over there with my family in a couple of weeks. So I'm very excited about that. But Martina, before we get into the conservation aspect and everything that you do, why don't you just let us know who you are and what you do?
All right. So I'm live in Hawaii, and I came the first time to Hawaii as a tourist in 1998. I'm on the Big Island. It's on the west side. It's the Kona area. And when I came as a tourist, it was just, let's go into the ocean. And I had my certification and went diving. It's actually this month, February, is my anniversary month.
Nice.
27 years that I saw the manta rays for the first time. And it is here on this coastline. It's a special tour. So in general, you talk about ocean recreation. You go somewhere tropical. There may be a tour operator. You go on a boat and go someplace. And that usually happens during the day. But this particular activity takes place at night because we take advantage of plankton being concentrating around light at night. And the manta population on this coastline has learned after about 30 years now, when there's light in the ocean at night, there is a high potential that plankton is there in abundance, and then the manta rays go to feed there.
Right.
So when I was doing it in '98 for the very first time, the activity commercially started in 1991, so not too many years. I was one location at this point. And I saw the manta rays, and it really, really touched my heart. They are big fish. They
Yeah.
are harmless. They have no teeth, no stinger, no barb. And I was diving, very bad diver, just a few dives under my belt. But it's a guided tour, so the dive masters took care of me, and you get real close-ups, and I mean really like manta rays flying over your head when you're diving. You're staying on the bottom, so you're not in their space, but the
Yeah.
idea is lights on the bottom. There's actually now today lights on the surface too from the snorkelers. It's this incredible cool setup with lights at night in the ocean. The plankton is in abundance usually on those nights, and the manta rays have learned it's the classical conditioning of an animal, in this case a fish in the ocean, to
Yeah.
come to a place where lights attract plankton and the manta rays have a nice dinner and we have an incredible show. And it really touched my heart. That changed my whole life.
I
I
can
was from
imagine.
Germany, I finished school, engineering school, then was a tourist, came here at first, and then the end of that story in a short form is I actually bought the video on my very first night dive with the manta rays, and it was, remember VHS tapes? It's like
Yes.
we
Yeah,
probably remember this.
I do.
And then I bought the VHS tape from this camera person on the boat, and I purchased it, and I did go home, but I met this guy a little more. Well, end of the story is I bought the video, I married the guy, so I moved to Hawaii. We were together here and running a business. First, it was based on photography, underwater photography, and now we're also a tour operator. So it's a span of
Unreal.
27 years. But yeah, you can actually say that it was an unreal journey. But
Yeah.
I just had turned 30 at that point and finished with school. I had a sad chapter of my life at that point and a lot of grief. And then I did this
Mhm.
manta ray dive, and being around these animals, they're gliding so gracefully through the water. They come so close. It was angel-like. So it
Yeah.
opened my heart to there's more to life, and so the grief bubble kind of opened up a little bit. And yeah, it was very powerful, and I believe I still remember that so vividly. And when I have my guests now, all these years, they come out of the water and they say that's one of the best things they've done in their life. And it's a perpetual story from guest after guest. They don't know what to expect, just like me,
Mhm.
but then they come out of the water 30, 45 minutes later and they're like, this was special, like core adventure, core experience in their life, feeling awe and wonder and,
Yeah.
just bliss. While they at the same time, maybe 45 minutes earlier, were like, what did I sign up for and what I'm
Diving
doing
at night in
here?
Hawaii.
It's
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
and then they go this emotional journey of those 30, 45 minutes and accomplished something really, really
Yeah.
special. It's my favorite thing to talk about, how people are courageous at the end and
Oh
carry
yeah.
that with them for the rest of their life. And in my case, I changed my
It
whole
was
life from
definitely like
Germany to
it is
Hawaii.
literally
Yeah,
life changing, right? It's
yeah,
literally life changing.
literally
I mean
changing. Yeah.
that's a phenomenal story, and it's true. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, this is a night dive in Hawaii. There are so
Mm-hmm.
many different species that are there. If you're not used to a night dive, I've gone. I have
Mm-hmm.
my advanced open water, so I've done night diving, but I did it in a freshwater lake here in Ontario. So I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really, it's scary because it's dark, but it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really that scary because there isn't anything that can harm me other than the water itself if I don't dive properly. But
Mm-hmm.
it's when you're in the ocean, especially in a place like Hawaii, and
Mm-hmm.
you maybe you have some preconceived notions of the water, especially at night. Predators come out, but I imagine like just being at the bottom of that water, looking up and seeing these beautiful, beautiful fish just kind of glide above you. And we've all
Mm-hmm.
seen it in documentaries, and you'll probably tell me it doesn't do it justice until you're
Mm-hmm.
in the water, seeing it for yourself. It must just be like a movie that's just in like better than 4K, just continuing over and in a loop. And it's just got to be one of the most beautiful things in the world. You probably have music going on in the back of your head as you watch this, right?
Yes.
Just phenomenal. And how many dives do you do a week? Like, does your company do a week?
So when I used to do specifically underwater photography, actually
Yeah.
videography, so I always, what my husband did, selling me that video back in
Yeah.
1998, I just then joined his small one-person company, as
Right.
videographer,
Yeah.
really bad diver, like 10 dives, makes like
Yeah.
nothing. You're kind of certified, but not qualified for anything,
Right.
right? But
Right.
so that was then for 17 years until 2017. I solely went diving 5 to 6 times a week, filming the guests like my husband did for me. And the industry had then grown, more boats came out. And for us, because we were so specialized on filming the manoids with the guests and making a living of that,
Yeah.
more and more companies said, we want your service. It was kind of a
Right.
win-win. They didn't have to own videographer or didn't have to take the dive master with a camera. It was less risky too, right? There's too
Yeah.
many things happening at the same
Oh, of
time.
course.
So,
Yeah.
and over the years, and in 2001, I believe, or maybe 1999, another dive site, my husband set up another dive site or discovered it and established it. So then there were two dive sites. And for the longest time, he was at one site, the original where I went to on 1998, and I was at the other site. So we covered many companies that were just wanting
Yeah.
a service. So when you ask me how often was I in the water diving, 5 to 6 times a week,
Wow.
pretty much from March till December. January, February is really rough. Then you cancel more,
Yeah.
but lots and lots of hours on scuba. And the dive is shallow. So for someone trying to imagine it, it's the dive is 30 feet deep. It's not
Okay.
that deep. It's really close to shore.
Yeah.
Hawaii, our island, it's the tip of the mountain you see when what sticks out of the water. And then
Right.
when you go down into the water, it just, you stay close to shore because when you go further out, it's just really deep. Suddenly, really
Yes.
deep.
Really deep.
So it's
Yeah.
a close to shore dive, 30 feet deep. But you have to be certified to do the dive. And then eventually there was then also the switch that snorkelers, if you think of what it attracted to that people want to do it. Most people are not certified. Then the snorkeler market opened up, and that happened maybe 2008, 9, 10. More and
Okay.
more boats came into the fold of the industry that maybe only did daytime snorkeling. Then now that added as a new product, snorkeling
Yeah.
at night. So you had then more people out there. And then in 2017 I stopped filming, and then my husband set up another site further north, and that's where I operate now as an operator.
Okay.
And over the years, about 60 companies have established themselves to offer the same tour, either diving
Wow.
or snorkeling, and that's a lot of people. We may
Yeah.
get into this here in a minute.
Yeah.
But we are very fortunate. My husband is really looking out for us, and our specialty is man rays. So he set up with a hotel on a private beach the tours. So I don't need a boat to
Okay.
get to the man rays. So it's pretty
Very
special.
nice.
And I'm in the
So
water
do you?
again from March till December. Usually we are in the water 7 times a week, and I personally go 4 to 5 times a week. So yeah,
Wow.
lots of
Now,
hours.
does the manta ray outfit, does that have, like, you guys also own the hotel, or you work off of, like, in
No, I'm a
partnership with the
vendor to
hotel?
the hotel. I'm a vendor to
Gotcha.
the hotel.
Okay.
That is my
Okay.
for-profit company. You see it here, Manta Ray
Yep.
Advocates.
Yep.
So if you would go to look for us, so that would be my website name too. But this is my for-profit company. But we rebranded back in 2012, 13. We used to be photography only, so we were called Ocean Wings Hawaii in photography. Now we are Manta Ray Advocates because when the industry grew and grew, nobody was speaking really for the animals, and I really felt compelled to be the advocate for the animal, and that's how it works.
Now,
Yeah.
there's a lot in the name to put.
Hold on a second. There's a
Yep.
printer going in the background.
Oh, no worries. I can barely hear it.
Okay.
You should be good. Now,
It's
there's
keep
a
go-
lot in the name,
it's several
right?
pages. So okay.
Okay, that's fine. There's a lot in the name, and having advocates at the end of that name is really important, obviously, to you, and it means a lot in the conservation space. It means that you're not just a tour operator; you're out looking out for the manta rays. You're an advocate for the manta rays, and in conservation, you are going to speak up for those manta rays on land where there needs to be protections. as the industry grew, why did you decide like we need more advocates out there while we're running these tours, and how did that change your, like, you and your husband's approach when you did the tour operating?
Yeah. So this activity works the best if we work together with different companies. You know, if you would do a daytime snorkeling, you can find a space along the shoreline and do your snorkel there. You one boat, not much impact to have maybe 10, 20 people on the water, right? But on Manta experience, you need the light to attract the plankton so that the manta rays come together.
Right.
And so only to set that up 100 feet away is really detrimental to the whole setup. So we call it the campfire method, where we all meet at the campfire. The divers sit around a light box, you know,
Yeah.
there's the box and there's people sitting around it. They sit on the bottom of the ocean, 30 feet, and they have a light, they're shining towards the surface. And then we said also the snorkelers, you guys come to the campfire as well, and then you be on top. So the idea of everybody wins, you know, I'm
Yes.
a big proponent. Everybody wins. Conservation is about humans win, but more important, the environment and the animals win, right?
Right.
That's just where my heart always has been, and that's what I'm trying to always push forward. And we're in this interesting time, I mean, for maybe 20 years now, it's like the people are like not understanding that our species is not as important, you know, it's like we have to really step back. Where we're going is not working, right? Anyway, and so when more companies with snorkelers started to join the tour business, they, like I said earlier, they maybe just said, oh, I have a daytime product to sell, you know, or maybe a sunset tour business, you know. No, I'm going to add man rays to it, you know. And then suddenly, instead of having 8 boats at the site, that would equal maybe 100 people that you organize at night on the ocean, we had then 15 boats, 20 boats.
Yeah.
The other night, I read a report, and I actually took a picture of one situation back in 2013. So it's 12 years ago. There were 30 boats at the site, and it
Wow.
was a winter night where when the swell create big waves that crash into the shoreline. Everything happening with, I don't know, 400 or 500 people in the water.
Yeah.
So it was just visually, it's like it's just too many people.
Too many.
Too many boats, too many risks, too many hazards, you know. And actually then not just, I mean, there were a lot of complaints between the groups, and, you know, you can imagine.
We also think about safety for divers too, right? 400,
Everybody.
500 people. It's hard to keep, like, even for a dive master or a dive instructor to keep an eye on that many people when there's so many other people. Like, people are probably running into each other and so forth, right?
Yeah, and you can do everything right. And we had since the 90s participant guidelines, you know, it's like don't touch the man rays is a really big one. Don't interfere with the animal. It's just there to eat. Don't touch it, right? And some other ones, and most people just followed that as well. But then it was really important that the operators get together and create standards as well. And that was prompted because the federal government, that's the Coast Guard, and in our statewide is called Department of Land and Natural Resources. They called a meeting in 2012, and I said, you guys, all the stakeholders here in this meeting, you have to figure out how to do this right, so we don't get too many reports, you know. And then it was mandated, you know, it's like come up with operator standards, but unfortunately they're all still voluntarily, you know. And then people came together. It was the beginning of 2013, from January to April, like 3-4 months. And we created a document, and it's 6 pages, and it tells you how to do a good man ray dive as an operator, including the participants and stuff like this. Sounds all really good, right? But then when people leave the room, operators, owners of companies leave the room, they said, it's a gentleman agreement. I'm not a gentleman. I don't care. And that's when really it got tricky at the sites, highly risk, you know, and that's why the downslide happened, where it was not about working together, win-win. It come to the place where losing, the environment was losing, man rays were losing, the tourists was losing, and the operator, I believe, loses too.
Of course.
But I always think of the tourist then too. It's almost a victimized situation, because
Yeah.
you sign up, the first 10 minutes I talked is like the best thing ever. But at the same time, you are in a position that you really need to know who you go with,
Yeah.
and that has safety standards. And again, as you go to the two sites that are original sites, you can do everything right and still something goes wrong. So this is tricky, and everything is heightened because it's at night. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And
in the
yeah.
sorry, in the past, were there operator licenses given out for specific for manta rays, or was it just because there were not enough that they didn't have to worry about? Like there was never enough to be concerned about it.
Exactly. It just
Yeah.
slowly started. And then there was a phase where the Department of Land and Natural Resources, short form is DLNR,
Mm-hmm.
they had a moratorium on permits for this particular harbor that most boats leave from. It's called Honokohau. And the other one is called Keaho, which is even smaller than Honokohau. There was a moratorium on permits, but that was challenged in court. And so there had to be more permits go out. And then, but Honokawa Harbor is also an interesting harbor, because the one side of the harbor is the ocean recreation businesses, snorkeling, diving, sunset, something like this.
Yeah.
The other side is the fishing industry. Man, this in itself, when you're conservationist, already crashes, because this is keeping fish alive. The other one is not, it's kill a fish, right? But fishing companies said, I don't make enough of a living on the fishing tours. Let's do manta ray tours too. And then you have this intermingle of very different business approaches. All in the manta industry. And it
Yeah.
was a lot of drama behind the scenes, and that all bubbled up over the years.
Yeah, I bet you there's probably a good amount of conflict between operators now too, because there's so many, and it's not as calm, or is not as, like, it's probably pretty chaotic when all those boats get together, 20, 30 boats getting together, that becomes a
Yeah.
little worrisome. Are there any, is there any scientists that are involved in like tracking these, like, are there any like scientific studies that are being done to track the increase of the amount of operators and tour guides, as well as the health of the stingray, or the manta rays?
Yes. So when the state and the federal government said do something about it, someone at the DLNR actually was our liaison, was a lawyer, and she was trying to also see what we can do with the voluntary operator standards, and then put it into a rule package. Because if you really want to tie this together, that you really have to do it this way, not just voluntarily. That started in, I believe, 2014. And in those following 2 years, I was involved too. A rule package was created. One of the things we said, we have to do the campfire method. It doesn't matter how you call it. Let's call it a central viewing area, right?
Yeah.
But campfire, most people can maybe envision this a little bit. But that sits in the desk of someone, or is being moved to the next person, because that first lawyer then also, she had a child and moved on. And then the next lawyer came in, had to come up to speed. Time goes by, things go by. Eventually, we were at the pandemic. Nothing happened there.
Yeah.
And then in 2022, a crew member was killed.
Oh, wow.
Where it was due to the captain being intoxicated, and it's a whole different story. But I feel so bad for everybody involved.
Of course.
Now that I'm so critical and speaking about it here on this podcast, I just want people to understand the behind the scenes stuff too, right? It's not all good here, right?
No, of course.
And in this case, it got really, really bad, And that's when the LNR kind of said, okay, we have to move forward. That rule package that lays around for a long time, the drafts. And there was a little movement. There was actually a public hearing. I think it's now 2 years old that the last public hearing took place. Yeah, and nothing happened since then. I think there's maybe something behind in the legislator. They need to have some laws changed so that the LNR's hands are really tight to do certain write it up. But it doesn't help anybody. I mean, the win-win is lost. More and more lose is in the situation. And I believe still people today can have a really good manta experience. But it's diminished, and I wish to move forward with this whole process of regulating the
Yeah,
industry.
I mean, obviously, it sounds like regulation needs to be done on all fronts, not just on the manta ray fronts, but also on the safety, not only for the crew but also for the tourists. You know, you don't want to ever see anybody getting hurt. God forbid,
Of
passing
course not.
away. Just like we saw, just like you just let us know. That's not how this is supposed to go. And obviously, accidents happen, and they're from whoever's mistake, but um, you want to make sure that that doesn't happen, and there's regulations to do that, to protect people from that, especially tourists, as you say, like people are going to Hawaii, they want to get in touch with nature. It's a perfect place to do it. They hear about these manta ray dives. When people go diving or snorkeling, that's what they're there to do, that's what they want to do, and they don't want to be taken for, not necessarily for money without seeing it, but also just having a couple hundred people there. You're not getting that same experience as you were told, and stuff. And so you want to make sure that there should be limits on the number of people there at a time, and all this. Um so how would you recommend this regulation be pushed forward from a policy standpoint?
Um, Recently, someone contacted me that was a student from the University of Hawaii, a law
Hmm.
student, and she said Earth Justice was looking at maybe doing something. I'm not sure
Oh,
how
nice.
far it went to Earth Justice, but I guess a professor was involved. They were
Right.
trying to do something that as a lawsuit against the state of Hawaii based on safety of the public, right? And of course, I had lots of information, because if you talk to me about man rays and everything that's involved in it, it's like pushing a button. So
Yeah.
I have so much information, and I really like to disseminate that information to the
Right.
right people, so things could happen. So in this particular law student, she set up a framework, what could be done, and then I didn't hear from her again. So that could
Mm.
be one venue that the state of Hawaii is being put on notice. And
Right.
interesting enough that nobody remembers that, or most people just don't remember that. The House of Representatives for the state of Hawaii in 2013 had a resolution where it already said this is a dangerous place.
Hmm.
You can look it up on our nonprofit website. I try to put the nonprofit website into a place where it's like telling a history of what happened already. You
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, if were there any studies being done? There has been risk assessments. The risk assessment said it's not just a matter of if something happens; it's when something
It's
happens,
when.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. More studies have been done in 2020. A really nice lady, her name is Kirsten Moy. She did an incredible, extensive interviews of stakeholders and put together a study. It's all done. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of making that push forward. But maybe people do other things right now because the world is so crazy in the first place, right? Um, but I feel like for the man race, for us as humans to come back to nature, it's one of the most important things. For
Yeah.
10 years, we have now all our phones, and more generations are coming up with more phone usage. And,
Hmm.
it's this, I think in English, you say that, once in a while, touch grass, right? Just go outside and touch
For
the
sure.
grass. And of course, when you do the man ray experience, it's something really special because at night, big fish, harmless, and I said earlier, from within 30 to 45 minutes. Actually, you mentioned it also too. You have preconceived ideas, can only be bad what's out there, and then you come out of the water, you're like, that's the best thing I've ever done in my life. So
Yeah.
I get these people closer back to nature and make better decisions for your future and future of your kids and everything, where we can keep the environment intact and keep the memories going for another, I don't know how many millions of years, right?
Yeah.
But they're very vulnerable because man rays have a very slow reproductive rate. It takes 12 to 13 months to have one pup.
Hmm.
It takes 10 to 15 years to be sexually mature,
Hmm.
one pup at a time. And the males have to be around every 2 to 4 years and maybe have a pup. There's
Yeah.
it's a species where we have to be very careful about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I mean, like we've been focusing a lot on the tour operations itself and people not having a good time or being too chaotic. But we do, the main thing, the reason why everybody's there is for these manta rays and
mhm.
for the plankton that's there. even though the food's there, eventually the manta rays may not want to come back because it's too chaotic. Maybe they're not, even though they're used to people, they may decide going somewhere else. They may get hurt. A propeller, accidents happen. Not to say that anybody's doing it on purpose, but when you have that many people in one area, things can happen to the manta rays as well. And if you damage them more and they don't survive, then that could be a big problem in the future, not only for the business, but just for the manta rays themselves and their conservation. Now you have this, you have manta ray advocates as a for-profit business, and then you started a nonprofit business called Hawaii Ocean Watch. Now, was it because of what you were seeing, the growth, the slow growth, or even just where the industry is at today in terms of tour operators and manta rays? Or was it other things that were involved as well?
Yeah, so I'm going to put a little bit of my business cap now, because at the same time, as a tour operator, you're a business person, right?
Of course, yeah.
And especially if you're in such a unique niche for a tour operator, it's like, I only have one product. It's looking at manta rays,
Yeah.
So, so the Hawaii Ocean Watch was formed in 2015. Remember I said 2012, the state and the Fed said, hey, come up with some voluntary standards, and abide by them. And we as a group, as a camera person, at that point I had my husband, myself, and someone else filming almost every night on these two locations that we had. And we saw what the operators were doing. We could say, hey, we've jokingly started out, we said we should make a blacklist of the people that are not doing what the operator standards said. But of course, from a branding point, it's much better if you say, let's create a green list of the folks that do the right thing. Right?
Yeah.
And so while we rebranded to Manta Ray Advocates, it was the effort of like, we're going to brand this green list of activity providers under the Manta Ray Advocates. It all was within the same year. But it was straining us as a business a lot. We were doing so many things for the nonprofit work, where the for-profit company really financially dire times.
Of course.
There were health issues, all kinds of things happening in those years. And for us as a solution was like, we have to bring this green list to a nonprofit concept, and then what does it mean? Well, you sign up for a 501c3, that's of course lots of paperwork, but
yes, it
like
is.
your mission, all kinds of things to do. But we felt like the green list of activity providers had a much better place on a nonprofit level, so we could separate those two businesses. And the green list lived there for a long time, and it's still there. But for the longest time, I was comfortable saying these companies trying their best and adhere to those voluntary standards. But it's about 2 years now that I took it down. While you still find the page, I came up with 5 questions. I'm saying ask 5 questions when you sign up, because with a good heart, a good conscience, I cannot say anymore who's doing the right things. Not that they don't want to do it, but with 60 operators, it's a jungle for the customer to find the right company, right?
Of course.
And I got some feedback, I think, also from the web links that you have to the green list. I didn't want to lose them. Was a good solution, I believe. Still trying to help the customer coming to the islands. And we have guests quite often that say, I came on to the Big Island only for the manta rays.
Right.
It hurts me. It hurts my heart if I hear that, and they would not be able to get the best out of this.
Of course.
Because I know how good of an experience it can be for people, and how people see the world actually differently afterwards. In their life maybe. So yeah. I just maybe tell you a quick story of a lady. She came to me years ago, and she was super nervous when we were going into the water. And maybe you can see that, but I have this necklace with a manta ray on it.
Yeah.
Right? And the tour took place. She succeeded. It was a great night. And later I got an email, and she said, you know what? This manta experience was so impactful on me. I bought myself also a manta ray necklace. And because she felt so much courage afterwards, what she can accomplish, although she had so much anxiety before, or intimidation before and accomplishment after, she said whenever she has today a bad experience or she's nervous about something, she doesn't know what's going on, she touches a manta ray and knows she can do it. And I'm always like choking up here, but this is the work that can be done through nature experiences, where people carry themselves differently afterwards. And I have lots of stories like that, but of course these stories stick with me, and I wish that for so many people. I wish I could tell everybody, everybody the manners, but obviously it's not working,
Right.
it's only 3 locations on the coastline, and there's a limit of how many people you can have in a space at
Yeah.
night in the ocean. And so that's just a sad
That's really
story.
interesting. Now, I just want to go over some of the questions that people can ask, because some of the people here
Yeah.
that are in our audience, they probably want to participate in something like this, but they want to make sure they're getting the right tour operator. So maybe we can go through each of the questions. So the first one was, which Manta viewing site do you go to? So which is the better one, and which is the ones that are less safe, I guess, or more unsafe?
So it's 3 locations on the coastline. The southern one is in, when we say south, it's really, when you look at the map, it's south. It's called Manta Village, or it's in Keaho.
Okay.
Spelling is Hawaiian spelling,
Yeah.
Keaho.
Yeah.
The other one is by the airport, which is the Kona airport, and it's called Manta Heaven, or it's a nickname, so.
Yeah.
And then the third location is further north. It's called Manta Point, but the
Okay.
access to that from the shoreline is private. You would take, there are only 3 boat companies that can work up there, because they are limited by permits up there too,
Gotcha.
So that would be the coastline. When you think of safety, I think dive companies still have the safest record versus companies that solely do snorkeling. And I
Gotcha.
say that as dive companies have to have dive masters, they are professionals, they have better training, versus a company that only does snorkeling. And I don't want to say anything about anybody right now. I'm just,
Of
in
course.
general, it's a transient workforce. People
Yeah.
come here to live their dream, come here for 6 months, and maybe then they leave because they cannot make it an expensive place to live.
Yeah. So it's
But
hard to
they
build
might
that
work on a boat.
expertise and that experience, right, over
Exactly.
time, as
Exactly.
you have, like your
Yeah.
outfit probably like 20 some odd years,
Yeah, yeah. I drill down on my crew and what's really important, So and I train them well.
Yeah.
Now, on the so when people ask, so what should I choose? If you Google manta ray experience and then dive store, I think you would find companies that just have more trained crew versus
Right.
someone who doesn't.
For sure.
And
For sure.
of course, there's always someone who could say, yeah, this company or this company. But, I think as a general rule,
Yeah.
most people just don't know much about an ocean recreation industry, So.
Of course. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. All right, the second question is, does the boat stay at the site, or if so, how? So why is that important to know how they stay at the site?
Yeah, so boats, to create this lit up area, the boats are supposed to stay where they park, and so the people get into the water and out of the water, and your guide would always know where the boat is. That's the ideal situation. And on this coastline, we have called mooring system. A mooring wall is, I say we, but the coastline is set up with subsurface mooring balls. It's actually a big buoy, right? There's a chain that goes down to the bottom of the ocean. And on the top of the buoy is a little hole, like an eye. And so when a boat captain drives the boat up to that mooring, you would, as a crew, you jump in and you tie up the boat through that eye.
Yeah.
That's just the best situation, because the mooring ball holds the boat in place, engines are off, you don't have to worry about much, other than as a captain you have to watch for the winds, how you swing
Of course.
around.
Yeah.
And the activity in Keaho, they unfortunately have only 4 moorings. That's one of the things that we tell the state, we need more parking spots, safe parking. And I believe the airport location has maybe 7 to 9.
Okay.
Well, when you think of a night when 20 boats go out, what do they do, right? Some people do daisy chaining. So one boat ties up to the mooring and the other one daisy chains. So I guess they have to save too. But then other boats that drop anchor, you sure hope that they drop on sand versus on coral. But that's another story I could go down to. And worst case scenario is a boat that lifeboats, a vessel that never turns the engine off and drops the people off, and then you do the tour with your guide, and the boat is somewhere in the dark and watches for your guide, and then
Right.
comes back and picks you up. And you really hope that the captain knows what he's doing, because
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah. Because
my
at
least
night too,
favorite.
right? Like that's also a dangerous situation when it's at night.
Yeah. If you look at the risk assessment on Hawaii Ocean Watch, you could see all the studies. I have extra page there for the studies. The risk assessment said one of the biggest concerns is the lifeboating, because it takes place at night and you cannot see the vessel. See,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to have lights on the vessel too, in the sense of you have some lights there on the top, they're red
Of course.
lights, red white lights, but that's just where they are stationed. But you're not supposed to have deck lights on, because when you have deck lights on, you actually attract plankton around your boat, but you're supposed to be at the viewing area. So
Right.
it's a dark vessel somewhere around, and you are maybe 100 yards away. And unfortunately, having so many customers joining this tour now, a lot of people that are not skilled enough for the ocean in the first place. And
Yeah.
I get customer calls regularly, and it's like, hey, I don't know how to swim. Can I join?
Oh dear. Oh
Oh,
no. No. Unless you want to stay on
and
the
then they're
boat.
surprised when so on a minimum age, people sign me. My 5 and 7-year-old, they're really good in the ocean. I'm like, yeah, probably during the day.
Yeah.
I could believe that, Or I had one that said, oh, they're sailing, they're really good sailors. Yeah, but I'm in the ocean at night, and with big fish. I think of a maturity, how to comprehend everything, because I'm
For
not
sure.
in a business to traumatize young minds. And
Exactly.
I say that because I had older customers over the years that say, hey, I had bad experience with water when I was young. And I never went back to the ocean because they just saw something, maybe the pool, or I don't know what they experienced with
Yep.
water. But I just say, for me, my personal, our business has 12-year-old. I try to use 10-year-old children, but let them participate. But we had meltdowns, crying kids. Nobody wins here, right? So I said to 12 years, and stuff like this is just to consider when you do the tour. So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's something that you definitely have to consider. Now, the fourth question is, or actually, no, third question is, what is the ratio of crew to guests on the tour?
well, if you're lucky, it's 1 to 6. Dive mass, so that's diving. It's usually
Yeah.
1 to 6. Yeah.
Okay.
Snorkeling, most companies, I believe, have 1 to 10. My company's 1 to 6. It's like so. I feel like the lower it is, the better for the customer, for personalized attention.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, yeah.
So
One of the
1 to 6, and that's the max you would want, right?
I do 1 to 6, sometimes 1 to 7, but I always have a swim guide that has been professionally. I mean, definitely they have lifeguard training, and most of them have dive master and are certified.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty rigorous on the training. I don't
Yeah.
know about other folks. I would think that it's their business;
You would
they
hope.
should do that too. But
Yeah.
I want to mention one more thing while we're on this, with what I don't allow is the full face masks. Are you familiar with those full face masks?
The
on
full, and then
snorkeling?
they've got the snorkel thing out here. Yeah, I heard it's
Yeah.
not good in like open ocean in situations because it's too fast of
Yeah.
breathing. Is that it?
Yeah, if you breathe shallow, CO2 buildup, and then you could get a headache, and you may be further away from shore, and then you're like, okay, I have a headache. How do I get back?
Yeah.
All kinds of things. That's just not a good idea. But as a guide, I tell you that just as a guide, I don't know what people tell me. They're just mumbling. It's like, I'm not good.
Oh,
I
right.
don't know. So I tried that too for a while, and let people use their full face mask. But then you come to 2 or 3 situations where it's just a borderline, and then I just created a policy. It's like,
Yeah.
of course you can join us. We have the gear for you,
Yeah.
but please, no full face masks. And
No, it definitely makes
really
sense because, and especially in an emergency situation, you want to be able to hear that person like that. You don't want to have to like, what did you say? Like, you don't have to repeat it because you might have to make a split-second decision, and and it's if you can't hear the person, then that's obviously a problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The fourth question here, I think you already answered it, is how experienced is the crew? Obviously, experience and training is going to be something that's really important. Dive master is one thing, but also experience in diving in these types of situations, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the questions you could ask when you sign up for it too. Is like, how is the crew? Is a 2-year-old crew, or could I have someone who is already doing it for longer, versus could I sign up on a day where every crew has their schedules and stuff like this. You can ask questions like this. But I've been in a situation when I used to sell my videos, so it's maybe 10, 12 years ago, and there was at the harbor, I was setting up my TV to show the videos to the people to make my sale. But at the other end of the harbor was the washdown area of the boats. And there's one night, this guy comes over and I didn't know him. He's like, oh, I just, I got out of the airplane 2 days ago and now I'm a crew member on this boat. I'm like,
Oh, dear.
okay. I mean, that happens, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I can say I know that there is a big, big difference on what you can experience, right? And I want the visitor, I want the tourist to demand good people. It's like not to just slide it by, so.
Yeah, especially like, I mean, I think this is, and this goes for any kind of scuba diving outfit, really. If you're just scuba diving during the day or at night, you want to make sure that the people you're diving with are experienced. They have not only the training and the certification, but they also have familiarity with the area, especially on a night dive. Having experience for a number of years, 10 plus years, 5, 10 plus years. And again, the area and the animal that you're diving with, and whatever else can come around, because this is an ocean. It's not as if it's just manta rays that are coming around. You have to be able to calm people down in the ocean who are a little nervous at the beginning and at the bottom. There's no room for error at that point. And although it's, I'm sure it's safe, like 99.9999% of the time, but you want to have that experience to be there just in case, and so that you can get out of it and just be like, I'm so happy that we had this person here because they could help out. I think that's a really important factor. That should be for any diving, even snorkeling. I think you're right. I think I never thought about it. It's like, sometimes you get caught up in a current, you don't realize it, and you need someone to help you. You never know, right? So it's definitely important. Now
Go
ahead.
If I may just, it's we are in a really serious business again.
Yeah.
Business person. I'm in a serious business, and I try to be in the much nicest way I can. Actually, as a German, sometimes like very direct. I try to smile. I'm like, no, we can't do it this way. Like what the customer wants from me,
Right.
I mean, we have these really, with February, we have really rough ocean right now. The waves are like 4 to 5 feet height when they come into the beach.
Yeah.
You cannot go through 4 to 5 feet height at night to go into the water. But then you have these customers and they're getting a little antsy with you on the phone. And I'm just like, that's a person that is disconnected. It's just about what I as a species can get out of it. And I wish that that we really turn the page sooner rather than later, that look through the lens of the environment, sustainability, what does the animal experience, safety, everything, just not so, what do I get out of it? And then if I don't get it, be not very nice, and I'm always happy to educate people because it's a specialized field, but sometimes you really think like, come on, people, common sense,
Well, for sure. I mean, there are, like you said, like until after the dive, when they see it happen, obviously they're a lot more connected and they understand the beauty. But sometimes the fact that they're out doing it, they just think that they can do it whenever. It's obviously there's a season for it. There's a reason there's a season for it. The ocean can be dangerous. It can be wavy. It can be, you have to respect it. And so if it's, if you're not offering at a time because of the seas, don't question it. Just be like, come back another time and come back during that season. Cause I think that's really important. This last question here is, what are your cutoff criteria for canceling? We kind of just talked about it in terms of like wave advisories and things like that. Why is that important? Obviously common sense, but why is that important for other criteria? And what is that criteria for like cutting? I assume cutting off means we're not going out. Is that what it is?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I call people and I say I'm not going. And so if I look at the forecast, so there are really good tools today to see what's
Yes.
happening. So my particular location up on the northern part of the island is there's a webcam and there is a website. I mean, there are many websites with surf forecasts. I use surfline.com and in particular
Hmm.
on this particular bay. And the buoys somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, they detect there's swells.
Hmm.
How the swells are created because of somewhere tropical storm. They create
Yeah.
swells. When these swells crash against the shoreline, then we have the waves, right? And interesting enough, I have to really look at the many years I've been here in the winters. We used to have a swell and then a little break in the winter and then another swell, really big ones, smaller ones. But this year I haven't worked since January 3rd, and the forecast tells me right now, I have a 16-day forecast, that I probably can resume business on March 5th. Because one swell after another, one tropical storm after another was generated somewhere in the Pacific. Hawaii, there's a lot of water around us. Trust me on
Yeah.
that one. When you fly here, you fly 6 hours over water, right? So many storms were just generating the swells and then the waves crashing into the shoreline. And so I have a forecast of that. And if I see this week, for example, I will not work all week, I call the customers 2 or 3 days ahead of time and say, it's not going to happen. Use your vacation time differently.
Right.
So that's one of the things. But even when we get to the point the swells are not as big as anymore, the waves have calmed down, I still need about 48 hours before I resume for two reasons. First of all, this bay is sandy, so the sand is all stirred up. You have all that. There's no visibility. You want to go into the Pacific
That
in
makes a
tropical
difference.
water, and it's like you want to see something, right? And you would not see anything. So I need time, and we need the ocean to let settle the sediment, And I also need manta rays when I do my tours. So people come to see manta rays, and they leave the area for a while, and hopefully they come back. I never know that. It is a nature experience, but we're very fortunate over the years. I can say the manta rays somehow always come back. Maybe a new animal comes in, new manta ray comes in, and we're naming it, and there's a personality and individuality to it. And then some manta rays leave the area, or maybe go to the other location along the coast. And there's a lot of tracking happening because we have the names for the manta rays. It's kind of cool. So that is for my location that I see surf height and have a forecast that I would cancel. But then people ask me when I have these guests on the phone and they say, hey, should I go on the boats? I'm like, well, it's going to be a rocky journey, because if my location is blown out, the rest of the West Coast is pretty much blown out too. The
Yeah.
swells that happen in the wintertime hit the west shore. We're on the west side of the island. They happen to come from the west and from the north. And then the rest of the year, they hit the east and the south. So then we're protected in our bay.
Yeah.
But it's a rocky road. It's like, and the
Yeah.
surface is like this, and
Yeah.
so you have to be ready. If you are prone to seasickness or just don't go on the ocean often and on a boat, then this whole tour could be just not a good memory.
For
You
sure.
spend a lot of money to be there. So
Exactly. Exactly. You spend a lot of money, and you want to make sure you have a good time. You want to be
yes,
able to get the entire experience, and that would be
yes,
great. Um, as we kind of come near to the end of this interview, you have a lot of hopes for this industry. You have a lot of hopes for the manta rays. What do you hope that happens, and how do you want to play a role in this sort of pushing this regulation? What do you plan on doing through the nonprofit, through through Hawaii Ocean Watch, as well as
yeah,
through manta ray advocates? What do you hope to happen?
yeah. I need a little bit more a team around me that are not just in the industry. Um, that lady last year from the University of Hawaii law student gave me like a whole different angle to this whole thing, right?
Mm,
And I wish the thing is, my business is also a one woman show for the most part. I have a team, everybody has their, but I have so many hats on. I have,
right.
yeah, as a business owner for a small company, you have so many things at the same time. So the time of the day is only so much. So I wish that we can move forward. I plan with my podcast that I have coming up this year also to invite folks like our local representatives. And I'm like, hey guys, 2014, you already had this resolution that the
Yeah.
representative, or if you're
Where
locally
is
the
it now?
state representative, it's like, hey, 11 years ago you did something already. Why is there no follow-up and stuff? So I want to
Right.
invite people, and also it always goes back to good policy that I'm looking for a really beautiful experience with manta rays. We need good policy, but you need good government. So you need to also get engaged with the legislator that create these rules and set it up for us, right? So we as the citizens can live with that, abide by it, and are okay with that, because of course it's always a process.
Mm-hmm.
But again, good policy comes good government. That means citizens have to be involved and not just let it slide, think someone else is going to do it. So my goal is with the podcast that steers up a little bit more. I actually just met my congresswoman on Saturday for the first time. She was on the Big Island for her town hall. It was a really cool
Nice.
experience. Yeah, I was very engaged. I think the citizens of the United States are waking up to a lot of other things besides
Yep.
ocean stuff, right? But environmental stuff. And I wish that we all maybe carry forward for the next, let's say, 10 years. If we all take a little bit more of our time versus just what do I get out of it? How can we as citizens create a country that has good policy through good government, and maybe it gives a lot of people, I mean, for me, it gives me a lot of, there's a lot of intention behind my work, but it's very content work. I really think I'm on the right side of history here for making the world a better place,
Yeah.
right? And I wish more folks feel that way and dedicate time to that
Yeah.
goal, to that mission. Let's make the world. I think for the first time in all my life, I think I'm 57. I'm not too sure. I always forget something in the 50s. But in my first time in my life, I feel like because so many citizens are now waking up and want to do good government, maybe we can really shape something. For the first time, I feel like I can shape something, and it should will hopefully fuel me. And maybe people step into my path that help me to get regulations for the manta rays and what else needs to be done. So
I love it. I love it. Well, that was a great way to end off the show. Martina, thank you so much for joining us.
If I could invite some people, if you want to come back to my website, I actually have manta ray meditations. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not see that. I must have missed
that. But back in the pandemic, I had a meditation teacher with me together, creating all my archives of video footage of the manta ray meditations and it's for free. It's on the website, and you can sign up for it. So you can actually dive down into the manta rays world and just on your device back home and just get a feel of how beautiful the animals are. And it's mantarayMeditations.com if you want to. It has a link to it. And I wish that the message for me is we can do better. Let's do better. Let's dedicate ourselves to do better. And this is the time to really think of our species. We can do and must do better. So.
Absolutely. No, I love it. Oh yeah, I have it right here. Perfect. I'm going to link to that as well. Martina, this is great. I love the effort. If there's anything we can do to help out, please let us know. But obviously we're going to be releasing this podcast, and so that'll get people help. And if you need help with the podcast, let me know. But this has been a great experience having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for the work that you've done and the work that you're going to do. We really appreciate it and can't wait to have you back on.
Yes. Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you, Martina, for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. It was so great to be able to talk to somebody who's been in the industry, but is looking out for the animals that drive the industry. Obviously, there's been an explosion of popularity with manta ray diving. This is something that people really want to take part in, but there's also an ethics code that you have to abide by when you say, who do I go with? I got to make sure that I'm safe. I got to make sure the manta rays are safe. I got to make sure that there's not too many people out there, and that regulations need to be put into place, because obviously people aren't really adhering to the voluntary regulations that have been put into place. And so that is an important aspect. A lot of times unfortunately, when businesses are provided a time to volunteer, not all businesses will volunteer their time to regulate themselves in terms of how they operate their business. Unfortunately, that's just the way life goes. But it's nice to have people like Martina and her business and other business operators that are similar to her that push for these regulations to ensure that people follow and abide by these rules, so that we can protect manta rays and we can protect the people and the boat operators that are actually doing this work. This is not easy work. The ocean can be very tough, especially at night, and people need to be safe. and the manta rays need to be safe. That's priority number one. Both of those are priority number one. So yeah, it was great to talk to Martina. Thank you so much for joining us, Martina. We really appreciate you sharing your information. I'll put the links to the websites that she mentioned all in the show notes, and you can get a hold of me and talk to me if you want. All you have to do is just hit me up on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. And if you have any comments or questions, you can put them in the comment section just down below if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, or if you you can contact me through Instagram if you're listening to the audio episode. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin from the True North Strong and Free. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.